moment, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We are going to call the meeting to order. This is the June 18th meeting of the Board of Directors, Marin Municipal Water District.
Larry, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry. We're not quite there yet.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that.
We do get an early banner is what happens, Reese.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Okay.
Ready?
Almost. And we are live.
Okay. So let's call the meeting to order. This is the June 18th meeting of the Board of Directors Watershed Committee. And the first order of business is to adopt the agenda. Do we have a motion?
Move approval.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Russell, Director Russell,
He is apparently not in yet.
No, he's there. You have to unmute. No, he's
yeah.
Director Russell,
Oh, good. Cynthia is here.
Oh, good. Okay.
Hi, I'm going to be videoless today, if that's okay.
Okay.
I'm just not an easy place for doing video.
Director Kohler, we are doing a roll call to adopt agenda. So I'm just going to go ahead and call on you if that's okay. Director Kohler,
Sure, aye.
Director Russell, Chairman Bragman,
Aye. Okay, we're on our way. Director Russell, can you hear us? You have to unmute. Okay, I'm not sure.
It looks like he is unmuted.
He is unmuted. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Maybe
we have
he's-
an audio glitch.
Volume.
We have time for public expression, and I can't let it pass without noting that this is going to be our last meeting, our last watershed meeting with our fearless leader, Greg Andrew, who is riding off into the sunset. I had a little preview of his plans and expectations, but I did want to bring it to everybody's attention because you weren't there when your resolution was passed by the board, and just want to say for myself how much I've really admired your work and your leadership, and you've really sort of invented our public commitment to the watershed, which I think is incredibly important and a great legacy of your work. So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd like to say something on this as well. I was on the board in 1995, 6, 7, when we, myself, Jared Huffman, and our senior staff trekked up to Sacramento and met with the state officials to settle what had been at the time our biggest lawsuit, where we were resisting any releases down out of Lagunitas Creek. Out of that came a settlement and the order that created our fish program. Steve Phelps, the late Steve Phelps, was very instrumental in that. He hired Greg Andrew and the team. Steve and Greg thereafter created the absolute world-class fish program we now have. So can't be understated. It is an enormous achievement. We would simply not be in the same place had Greg not stepped in as the right man at the right time.
Yeah, nor would the fish.
Yeah, nor would the fish.
They may have disappeared without you. So, and the freshwater shrimp, which you always remind me, don't forget the freshwater shrimp.
Yeah, I was working on freshwater shrimp just today, as a matter of fact.
So there you go.
Thank you. And if it's appropriate, I'd like to make a brief statement on this, if I could.
Please.
You know, if I could just share before, because I wouldn't want to go after Greg. Well, Greg, it was going to be good. You didn't have to leave. Oh, there you go.
I was just getting my family in here.
to add to it, as we're thinking of replacing Greg in the very big shoes he filled, it is clear how formidable that replacement, that effort's going to be. In addition to what's been said, he's brought in millions of dollars in grants that have supported stewardship work beyond what the district could have done otherwise. And for me, as I hear about all this and talk with Greg and others, one of the most notable things is the way he managed the Lagunitas TAC, creating relationships and partnerships with advocacy folks, with regulators, with interest groups, all in such a seamless way that maintain the focus on the business of the district, the broad mission of the district, and encompass all their interests in a way that just, you don't see that too often, a group like that that's so diverse to really reflect in such a long-term collaborative and a partnership way. And I just think it speaks so highly, Greg, for you and your efforts.
Thank you very much, Ben. I appreciate that. So yeah, it's interesting to hear some of your comments because I did write a little statement and I'll be brief, but you actually touched on some things. But this is my son, Tristan, and my wife, Rita, behind me. And I'm really retiring to spend my time with Tristan and help him as he goes on with his life. And that's what's motivating me with the timing of leaving now. And it's all leaving on a good note. So I first do want to thank a few folks, and I'll rattle this off. Mike Swayze, Steve Phelps, Eric McGuire, Dana Roxon. There's many reasons to thank them, many, but without those 4 people, I would not have been hired at the Water District. I want to thank you, the board, and your predecessors. And Jack, as you mentioned, you've been here the entire time, and now I'm leaving and you're staying, going on.
Kind of
So
scary.
you've been, well, you're doing, you know, my dad is just turned 94, not that you are, but he's going strong, and so are you. So
Thanks.
good for you, Jack.
Jack's older than that, Greg.
Yeah.
So when I started 24 years ago, I recognized that being the first person in the position, I had the opportunity to influence the things that I did. Being a field biologist, I feel lucky that I have been able to stay in the field, doing the surveys and being out with the resources I have been responsible for. While I have always been a seat of the pants biologist, I am observant, pay attention to detail, and am thorough. And I do try to add a little extra to understanding how nature works. It's remarkable, and I have been fortunate to have been supported by the district throughout, and that's from day one by everybody. I do especially appreciate the support of the board, and that support actually extends all the way down through all levels of staff, and I do want to express my great appreciation for that support. We would not have happened without it at all levels. I am proud of how the district has been a leader locally and regionally, and you can be too. So thank you for this opportunity and for my window of time here. Thank you very much.
You will be missed.
Yes, for sure.
You will be
You're already missed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're still here and you're missed.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you so much, Greg. And I'm sorry, I had a problem linking into the call. My computer's acting up. But Greg, you're amazing. Thank you so much for your work.
Well, thank you. I'm going to stay in on the meeting. I really appreciate that from all of you, and really great words. It means a lot to me, so thank you.
I'll just,
I'm going to stay and just listen to the meeting and, you know, be here if something comes up. But
Yeah, don't forget, we got your cell phone number.
here
yeah,
we
it
do.
just went off.
And I'll just
it's-
chime in, Greg. I don't want to,
It's Mike Swayze. Thank you, Mike. And yes, I am.
Yeah.
I'll just pile on, Greg, and just say, add my thanks to everybody else's. It really has been an honor and a delight to know you these last 15 years. And I'm just very, very grateful for your leadership and your pioneering of this program. You just deserve all of the kudos that you get.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And our fish counts will never be the same now.
Yeah.
You Mr. Fish Electrocutor. I remember that all that stuff. You borrow the boat and you zap them.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm going to go on, and then you got a great crew, a great staff, to very talented, a lot of resources, really good. So you're all in good hands, and I may be missed, but after a while, you're moving on. So you're going to do great.
I wouldn't take that bet, but we have a lot. It's a big hole right now.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do our best.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so any other public expression? And seeing none,
We
let's
do,
move on.
actually, Director Bregman,
Oh.
we do have 2 attendees.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to go ahead and call in on the first, Warren Karlinzig.
Okay.
Hi, Warren.
Hey, Warren.
Can you hear me? Great.
Yeah.
Loud and clear.
Perfect. So I believe also, I'm Warren Karlinzig with Common Current in San Anselmo, and also Drew Norton, with Sherwood Design Engineers is on. So I want to address, how can MMWD plan, deploy, and maintain green infrastructure effectively? Sherwood Design Engineers in San Francisco and Common Current in San Anselmo would like to address critically important issues to MMWD, its customers, and Marin County. Our firms have worked with water agencies, municipalities, and recreation areas, creating science and policy-based design as part of successful plans that have delivered a wide range of cost-effective projects. For MMWD, we have identified numerous high-priority areas to recommend green infrastructure improvements to roads, parking lots, and public areas. A watershed-scale green infrastructure plan would identify additional high-potential sites and would help MMWD prioritize the scoping of critical green infrastructure improvements, with design benefiting water quality, species protection, reservoir water quality, and infrastructure capital management, including road and parking lot lifespan and maintenance. This plan would benefit the district by providing a framework for short and long-term capital improvement projects that align with MMWD's sustainability and fiscal responsibility goals. 1, protecting drinking water and wildlife habitat in MMWD watersheds from pavement, pollutant, and sediment runoff, using green and natural infrastructure design and engineering. 2, prioritizing future projects using a risk-benefit analysis of recommended green infrastructure design schematics based on observed runoff flows and other GIS, climate, and site resource data. The Lagunitas picnic area and the Bontempi parking lot areas would be of highest priority due to direct impacts to Upper Lagunitas Creek and Bontempi Reservoir. 3, adding new operational and maintenance standards for green infrastructure to the MMWD Road and Trail Master Plan. So what is green infrastructure? It's an ideal practice for a water agency that owns and manages its watersheds. It reduces pollutant loads and sedimentation in reservoirs, lakes, rivers, creeks by filtering and storing excessive runoff from pavement and other surfaces. GI helps recharge surface hydrology and aquifers, providing increased water storage volume and preserving critical ecosystems and sensitive species habitat. GI can reduce erosive wear, damage, and destruction of hard infrastructure, and it directly addresses climate change risks such as drought and infrastructure damage from extreme precipitation events.
Hi, Warren. Sorry to interrupt. So just to let you know, you have passed the 3 minutes. So if you want to
just in summary, Sherwood would like to submit a proposal for watershed scale green infrastructure plan for consideration, and we welcome questions or comments or observations that anyone has. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So that means staff will be getting some kind of a proposal, and maybe we can take it up in due course. We're limited right now what we can really comment on in open time, but if you get us the proposal, we can take it from there. So Ben, I don't know if you want to
Great.
add any other comments.
Yeah, you can always talk to staff on this sort of thing. Thank you.
All right.
And we also have Larry Minikis here. So let's see here. Larry, I'm just going to go ahead and ask you to unmute and you can talk.
You're aware, Sharice, that half of the people are named Larry in this call, right?
Sorry, Larry Minikis. Sorry about that. Larry
Not
Minikis.
a problem. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
No.
Well, tough. Greg left. I just wanted to concur there you are, Greg. I just want to concur with everything all the wonderful things that were said about you. They're all correct. And that's my 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry Minikis. Thank you.
All right.
You're welcome.
All right.
And that concludes our public expression for items not on the agenda.
Okay. Any more praise to be heaped on Greg? Now's the time.
No,
Okay.
no, he's the past now.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's yesterday's news.
Time moves on. That's right.
We're really done. Okay, so the next item is to review and approve the minutes of the December 19th Watershed meeting, special meeting of the Board of Directors. Is there a motion to approve or any changes?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Kohler,
Aye.
Director Quintero,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Chairman Bragman,
Aye. Okay, let's go to item 2. This is the volunteer program annual review, and Suzanne is on the spot.
Okay, thanks, Larry. Sharice, you were gonna share, I hit share screen. Okay, I can do that. I have a presentation here for everybody. There we go. Does everybody see that?
There it
Now we
is.
do.
Yep. Got it.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you for letting me take the time to go over volunteer program. As you know, the volunteer program strives to connect people to nature and their water source by offering hands-on activities on the Mount Tam watershed. So this annual presentation will give an overview of the programs we've offered for the past 10 years, and will highlight some of our accomplishments from the past fiscal year. So first, I would like everyone to take a deep breath and suspend our anxieties and uncertainties during this most uncertain time, just for a few minutes, so we may express gratitude for what we have accomplished as a community and as public servants. In a few minutes, we can take another deep breath together and ponder about what the volunteer and school programs may look like as we forge ahead into the next 10 years. So, okay. By engaging volunteers and students, we are able to increase our capacity to improve trails, restore habitat, protect threatened wildlife, and monitor both the rare and invasive species across the landscape. These are great accomplishments, but bigger than those metrics is the public's trust and understanding that we are doing right by the mountain and that we are doing right by them, and that our role as stewards extends to include them. Slide 3. The most popular way for volunteers still to support our vegetation management plan is through habitat restoration. By involving volunteers in invasive management as outlined in the BIFI-FIP, we reduce the threat of fire caused by monocultures of broom. By removing invasive plants, we're keeping a healthy matrix of habitat types, which is the basis of life for all the animals and plants that call Marin home. Each year we host about 14 Saturday restoration events that are family friendly, and about 18 school field trips we run that are focused on restoration, which can total about 3,500 hours. Another program that has long-term significance in our community is the Trail Crew program. The Watershed maintenance crew leads volunteers in cleaning water bars, repairing stairs and bridges, fixing tread, and cutting back overgrown brush. These activities support erosion control, which directly impacts water quality and supports a world-class network of hiking trails. Over the past 10 years, we've averaged one trail crew one Saturday a month, and always a grand National Trails Day project. Over the past 2 years, events have been held quarterly. All agencies on the mountain have experienced a decline in their trail programs of recently. OneTam did recently hire a trail stewardship manager who will be working to rebuild the program and to attract and train folks in proper trail building techniques so we may thoughtfully address the deferred maintenance on our roads and trails system. Wildlife conservation and community science. Our volunteers contribute to the conservation of our natural resources through data collection, data analysis, and sharing the research with the public. We can educate our users and influence behavior through our programs that highlight the scientific work being done on the watershed. Frog and turtle programs. The frog docent program's goals are to raise awareness about the foothill yellow-legged frog and to protect the breeding site at Little Carson Falls. Frog docents have spent over 2,000 hours at the falls in the past 10 years and have informed more than 8,000 visitors about the vulnerability of this amphibian and their habitat. The goal for the Turtle Observer program is to establish population estimates for the native western pond turtle and the non-native turtles that are in our reservoirs, and also to educate the public about our native species and the importance of not releasing pets into the wild. This is always a popular program for individuals and for families. And every year, about half the turtle docents that work with us are under 18. The Wildlife Picture Index Project, also known as the MWPIP. In 2014, the barely formed OneTam Collaborative launched the MWPIP to create a comprehensive study of the mammals on the mountain. Volunteers sort through the 2 million photos the cameras collect annually, a feat that staff could never do alone. The Water District hosts 2 picture ID parties per month in the Corte Madera office. Community members also help service equipment in the field quarterly. MMWD utilizes volunteers more than any other of the partner agencies involved, and we have the most faultless data so far of all the agencies. The program is now on hold as we wait a major upgrade to the database and the software. When 2.0 is released, we can resume cataloging parties, and we will be launching the ability for volunteers to catalog from home. Internships. So MMWD staff mentors college and high school interns in the fields of natural resource management, in public information, and in environmental education. Working alongside our staff, interns gain insight into the professional world and build up valuable work experience. We've hosted anywhere from 2 to 12 interns per year, semester-long interns. We've worked with many students from College of Marin, San Francisco State, and Temescal High. In the summer, students who attend college all over the country come home and intern with us during that summer break. Of the 8,000 or so volunteer hours that we collect every year, almost 3/4 of them come to us through our school programming. Our current habitat restoration field trips stand on the shoulders of the original broom removal field trips that were started with Manor school teachers almost 25 years ago. We host about 27 grade school classes per year, which is a lot of broom and many rounds of Rochambeau, and 9 college classes about come every year and perform field studies with us. which allows us to get over 3 acres of vegetation surveyed around Bontempi and Lake Lagunitas. With the elementary and high schools, our staff visits each school class to deliver a lesson that aligns with the science standards for that grade. The following week is when the class comes up to the Watershed for their half day of stewardship and fun. College students join us to learn about forest health issues affecting Mount Tamalpais. The data they collect are used to track changes in bloom spread over time, Douglas fir distribution, sudden oak death, fire regimes, and just general vegetation types. Understanding the direction of habitat changes is crucial in protecting the diversity of plant and animal species on the mountain. Dr. Eric Nelson at the Dominican University, he conducts a survey every year that asks his first-year biology students which field project they find most satisfying, and I'm happy to say that our vegetation monitoring lab always ranks the highest. Also, to round out the school program on the Watershed, we must mention Trout in the Classroom, which, Greg, thank you. I think you helped launch 20 odd years ago. This program is a testament to the strength that only comes through partnerships. So through a classroom experience of hatching fish eggs, students learn firsthand the value of aquatic environments and how their personal actions affect waterways. The students' experience of raising these baby fish culminates in an epic yet intimate farewell at Bontempi Lake. Since 2015, we have worked with Trout Unlimited, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and One Tam, working together to make the release day experience stress-free, safe, and fun for all participants. We schedule and nurture the fish release experience for about 2,000 people each year. That's about 70 classes on the Watershed over a period of 10 weekday mornings. We also work with other student groups throughout the year, capitalizing on current projects that we're working on, the district is working on, and responding to the needs of teachers and students. So last summer, 2019, was the 5th year of the LINK high school internship program. MMWD again hosted students over at the courtyard at the start and the end of every day. And last summer, the LINK interns surveyed the UC Davis Forest Resiliency plots, and they actually came up with the design for gathering data on seedling regeneration within those plots, something that UC Davis hadn't really fully considered yet. And with that data, a new project was added to that to replant in some of those plots. In addition to the 4 days of service on the mountain, they're also exposed to the skilled trades. Learning how to use basic power tools is very empowering to use. The National Park Service has created a summer program. It's like a mini LINK for students at Davidson Middle School for students who've recently arrived to the States. Last summer, our staff led a hike and a bilingual scavenger hunt around Lake Lagunitas, which helped them build their relationship to the mountain and also to each other. It was a challenge to create accessible activities for these vulnerable youth, but it was so rewarding to have them participate. Another project focused on student equity was the Summer STEAM Institute. Marin County Office of Ed offered an art and science professional development workshop for teachers last summer who wanted to empower students to become advocates for the environment. We participated in the community resource fair, and we were consultants each day during the week-long design cycle. We advertise our volunteer programs through social media channels, our website, and partner websites. Over 3,000 people are subscribed to the monthly volunteer program email. In turn, the volunteer program serves as an informational resource for engaged community members and other stakeholders. When a member of the public meets a staff at a community presentation or on a guided hike, a friendly face becomes associated with the water district. When volunteers find common interest at a broom pill, it's the water district that's provided this connection. Virtual platforms such as iNaturalist also forge connections to our lands, and the diversity of species that we support is celebrated through that. Our knowledgeable volunteers are excellent spokespeople for the water district. Our wildlife docents and our wildlife ambassadors are trained to offer assistance and information to folks wanting to learn more. So this is where we take a pause and look ahead. So during this global pandemic, when people are isolated and stressed, parks and open spaces provide the physical and emotional well-being that so many of us need. The volunteer program can rise to this challenge by providing positive experiences with nature through modified programming. For example, we can revamp our wildlife docent programs pretty easily to provide digital instead of in-person trainings. The frog and turtle docents already perform their volunteer outings solo or in family groups. We can design smaller group events around habitat restoration and trail food programs. We can continue to be a resource for schools and provide the outdoor space and programming. We want to support emotional and intellectual learning for the students in Marin. The district is also working on expanding our Watershed Ambassador program through the creation of a Watershed Greeter program, along with one TAM, to welcome visitors back to the trails and ensure that community members are using safe practices while visiting the mountain. We are evaluating options and opportunities to get us through this transition. So for example, this summer, the LINK internship, it's being reduced from 6 weeks to 4 weeks. And we will not be meeting in person, but we will have online presentations and develop solo outdoor activities for the teens. We are exploring a pilot of a wildlife camera on campus project. Curriculum can be built using pictures captured by the wildlife cameras on school grounds, plus data from the whole WPI project. By using authentic photos from animals living in Marin, the students would be contributing to our local knowledge and staying connected to their school. During the school closure, I worked with the Marin County Office of Ed to create a 14-episode TV series that was for pre-K to 5th graders. It was titled Creating Curiosity Out the Front Door. The half-hour segments strengthened language acquisition and scientific thinking and encouraged kids to get outside. They've been filmed in Spanish and English and can be watched at any time on the COE YouTube channel. So last page here. We have a strong community of environmental advocates in Marin, but are we hearing from everyone? At this time, we should acknowledge and examine our own biases. We want to address issues of equity and voice. We need to engage a broader, more diverse audience. If we care for all plants and animals, ecosystems and landscapes, we should be caring for all people. High biodiversity indicates ecosystem health. Diversity of cultures and races indicates societal health. By supporting and leading projects such as the LINK internship and the newcomer program at Davidson Middle, we can create youth advocates for the environment. By participating with our public schools and our libraries, we can promote stewardship of nature to first-time volunteers. Change is hard, but we are all riding this tidal wave of change. We should embrace it and steer it to create positive impacts for our mountain and for our community. I feel optimistic as we go forward through this pandemic and out of it. I thank you for your attention, and I welcome any questions or comments that you might have.
I do have a question. It sounds like you've been able to carry on right through the COVID-19 season, obviously with some tailoring, but nevertheless, essentially going uninterrupted with the program. Is that an accurate statement?
No.
No, okay.
No, everything was pretty much shut down in March.
Okay.
You know, for example, we did all the training and the preparation for trout in the classroom and the scheduling and everything, and then that was supposed to happen the end of March, and it didn't happen. So we're on pause at the moment, and just looking ahead. And then a few new things, were able to happen, like the television program with MCOE, and in a couple weeks I will be working with Link. Essentially, things are on pause since March.
Okay. Yeah, and any prospect of when you can kick back in at some level?
Well, we've been having lots of meetings with partner agencies, and it's really up to the health department. And we have some ideas on how to roll out a few things slowly, but we're being, conservative for sure.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from our board?
I have a couple comments and questions. Thank you very much for the work that you do. That's excellent. And the presentation was really very good. There were several things that came to mind for me, and these are not in order of importance. One of them, when you have the newcomers on the Watershed, who's providing the bilingual interpretation?
Right. So I speak very broken Spanish, and it was actually a point of connection in that I was trying to speak Spanish and they were trying to speak English, so that was good. But I could not have done it without a fluent staff member. So NPS actually had 2 staff members who were fluent in Spanish, and they were the ones that were running this program. And like a mini Link, they visited different agencies over like 5 weekends, and so I saw them during 2 weekdays, and then hosted them at Lake Lagunitas one Saturday, and built some games around bilingual activities. But I am not fluent.
Was one of them a woman named Socorro?
No, it was Jasmine Reinhardt was the NPS person, and then she had an intern, and I'm forgetting his name.
We should talk offline, because I have some more connections for you that are local, that are really good trained naturalists who actually Spanish is their first language, but their English is as good as their first language.
Okay.
I'd be happy to talk with you about that. Something really interesting is that the Secretary of Resources for the state established a new deputy director position, which is the deputy director for biodiversity and habitat for California. And I think that the programs that you're involved in could be really meaningful, looking at state level, understanding, because I know that that program will include future funding, and particularly with the biodiversity of Mount Tam, I think could be a really interesting opportunity. And I will talk with you about that. I do think that in this time of COVID and shelter in place, there's no way any of us can predict how long this is going to last. And so I think that there's an extraordinary opportunity in thinking about how do we operate in the present with the conditions that we're operating with. And my experience with some other groups is that it really does sort of put you in a position, and you intimated this, to really expand the citizenship understanding of what's going on in Mount Tam by utilizing things like, I love the idea of creating diversity, or curiosity rather. And I might encourage the consideration of seeing if there's a place on the website for MMWD where you can put together these short videos and have a link to them if you post them on YouTube or something like that. And Zoom at the university, we're doing a bunch of work right now in getting short presentations of 5 and 6 minutes that are actually accessible by everybody. And Zoom is a perfect platform for that. And I actually might suggest that an opportunity there might be to get an intern who really understands the capabilities of Zoom, because it's actually pretty amazing. And you could actually do things in the field and then post them on Zoom. And the thing about Zoom, as you know, is you can record them and then download them and edit those videos. And it's a really good application for creating broader broader impacts, really, for your work. And I think that it actually can set the stage for you being able to recruit from that broader body when things start to return to some future scape, which could include additional people in larger groups and things like that. But that's It's really an unknown, as we all know. It's funny. And then the last thing, in terms of your volunteer groups with schools, and you mentioned the middle schools and the high schools and the different programs, has there been any conversation about an effort to reach out to all the high school mountain bike teams?
There has, I've been at the Water District for 11 years now, and we've had a few conversations in and out, and I've worked with a few of them over different summers, and there were like suggested volunteer hours that they had to commit to and things like that. I do have a good relationship with Tom Boss at MCBC and have done quite a few projects with him, not necessarily just with the high school mountain biking team. He's more, Marin wide. But yeah, I've had conversations, we've worked on things, but I don't have like an established program for them. Their weekends are very, very full.
Well, my daughter was a mountain bike team member, and I was one of the parent supporters of all that. A couple things. One of them, there is a lot of money in those teams. The cost of the bikes, the parents who are funding that, there is a lot of money there. And also, I think we need to call out their support as a community. And as community investors in what really is a huge benefit to the health of those students and the experiences that those students are having. And I would be happy to work with you and with anybody else, with the folks who I know who are still in the mountain bike community, because I do think, I almost like to see it as a requirement, frankly, for mountain bike teams to be on the mountain. There's got to be some investment on their part in the facilities of the mountain. And it also creates an opportunity for partnership with the Water District Rangers. There really is, I think you could get it to where these kids know the names of all the Rangers, and not in a bad way.
Right.
So anyway, I think your presentation is really great, and you kicked a lot of stones loose in my head. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Armando.
I have a couple of comments, Armando. Well, one's to Armando, one's to Suzanne. Maybe the bikes could pay in broom, pounds of broom or tons of broom per month. They have to contribute a certain amount. I think it's a clever thought you have there. Suzanne and I have another cute thought, I think. I think we should think about, being the frogs have docents, why don't we give the frogs names and put them on the webpage and have a frog of the month?
We could do that.
Yeah.
Something to think about,
Yeah.
It would raise their profile in what's going on, I understand they have yellow legs, and I know the red ones have red legs, but, most people have probably never seen a picture of a yellow-legged frog. And anyway, a thought.
Yeah, I have to say the public information team just in the past year or so has really upped the ante on our social media channels.
Cool.
And showcasing like cool photos of wildlife and plants from the watershed. They've been doing a great job of that, and some of the photos are taken by staff, but then I also get a lot of photos taken by our volunteers. So it's really great when we can then turn that around quickly, get it on social media, put the volunteer's name on it. It definitely gains some traction and some smiles from people.
Well, we might even show these as selfies from the frogs. Okay. Here's Jorge's selfie for the week. Here's what Jorge's doing, or here's what Rachel's doing,
They do have numbers.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, see, numbers convert directly to names, right? We just do a code. I like that. Are they tattooed?
No, the GANDA, the folks that we hire to do the the surveys in the pool, they take chin photos, which IDs them, kind of like if you get whale tail photos, you can ID individuals.
Well, see, that's worth a story on its own in the newsletter. Okay, the chin photos of the frogs. And we could have, this is this week's chin photo.
Frog recognition software.
And you find the frog, like finding Waldo.
They don't have that yet. Apparently, human eyes are still the best at figuring that out.
And they're stopping that because it doesn't really work.
No, but think about it. You could have people trying to find frogs politely, not intruding.
Hmm.
With binoculars.
Yes.
Yeah, or whatever. Then we must get closer than that if we get chin photos.
Well, that's the research scientists that we collaborate with. They're allowed to go in and touch the frogs.
I see. Oh, so they actually took them out of the water to take their chin photos?
Yes,
Oh,
they
wow.
take swabs of them and weigh them and sex them and all that kind of stuff. The docents are there to be a friendly barrier between the visitors and the frogs.
That's cool. But we could still have a sign that says, Ralph is the frog of the week.
I like that.
Yeah.
So, Suzanne, do you have a program on the removal of the red-eared sliders? The non-native?
What is that?
Eric, so the red-eared sliders are the predominant non-native turtle that are in our reservoirs, and they're the ones that they kind of over-compete and reproduce a lot quicker than our western pond turtles.
Got it.
Yeah, and we have far more red-eared sliders than we have western pond turtles. That has been shown by all the volunteer collected data. So certain years we do use staff time to go out and try to collect the red-eared sliders, and some years we get a couple, some years we get 20. But it's a huge effort to build traps or go out in canoes and things like that. And of course that happens in the spring when everything nature, comes out. So finding a suitable amount of time and really going after these turtles to eradicate them, that would take some money and a few years of very concerted effort. And we've just kind of done it piecemeal. We have a turtle jail up at the skybox. And we collect those turtles, and then we have them as pets for a few months, and then at the end of the season we bring them up to a rescue center every year. But it's just a drop in the bucket, those turtles that we've been able to collect.
I was thinking more like you take them to a barbecue, but whatever.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in? Just my only comment, thank you, Suzanne, for everything you do and a great, thoughtful presentation. And just want to underscore Armando's points on the media connection, especially now, incredibly important.
Yeah.
To get our programs out there for the public sheltering in place that may not be able to get out. So the links to the MCOE program on our website, I think would be really a great improvement or a great thing to add. And also to underscore some kind of program with mountain bike teams and the mountain bike community in general. I do think we need to create that culture of cooperation and appreciation that Armando mentioned, and actually wanted to ask staff if perhaps we could bring back a discussion at our next Watershed meeting about things we could do to reduce the trail conflicts that have come to fore with the whole e-bike issue. So I know I've gone back and forth with staff, and I think it's all part of that big picture that you're helping to build, and really changing the culture of the community to appreciate the environment. I think that's just hugely, hugely important as we go forward. So thank you for helping do that. So.
Thanks, Larry, and thanks for coming to a few events every year.
Yeah, well, it's fun. It's fun and it's amazing. I went back to Sky Oak Ranch or Sky Oak, or not Sky Oak,
Sky Ranch.
Sky Ranch. And you can see what has been done. I mean, that we've pushed back a forest of broom against this mixed oak woodland, and it does change the habitat. So it's pretty cool to see it. So thank you for doing all that. So do we have any public comment or any further comments anybody wants to make?
So we do have public comments. We have 5 public comments that we received via email, and I do see Larry Manikis's hand up. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with the emailed comments, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, great. So this one is from Fernando Agudelo Silva, a College of Marin professor. Dear Marin Municipal Water District board members, please maintain and increase your allocation of resources to better understand your watersheds, specifically staff and resources to monitor the plants, lichens, animals at the MMWD district watershed. I have taught at College of Marin for many years, and thousands of our students have benefited from the services your watershed and employees provide to us. In particular, allowing faculty in the College of Marin to conduct multiple learning activities in the areas you manage. I am one of the many faculty at College of Marin that use your watershed as a learning resource for your students. We plan field classes that we conduct at the watersheds, assisted by your wonderful staff. Too many to individually mention, but specifically Janet Klein, Andrea, Suzanne Whalen. What they have done is remarkable. They assist us to schedule field trips to the watershed. They coordinate with us the activities at the field trips and make field demonstrations. Also, the work we do with your students results in important data that you use for the management of the watershed. For example, we have monitored vegetation in Mount Tam for many years. The MMWD uses this data for vegetation management. I believe that the outreach provided by your personnel contributes to a better support for your institution by the citizens of Marin County. Just thinking I cannot take my students to do field practices at your watershed and not having the assistance of Suzanne Whalen and coworkers deeply concerns me, because my field classes depend on it to great extent. I hope you maintain and increase the resources you allocated to your personnel involved in outreach, education within the framework to watershed management. If you have any questions, please contact me. So that's the first one. The second one is from Laura Honda. She's a 4th grade teacher. Dear MMWD board, I just want to express my gratitude for the wonderful watershed field trips all these years. My students have gained so much from them, an appreciation for and a sense of stewardship for our beautiful watershed. They now are very good at being water-wise, and they teach others to care. I sincerely hope that these extremely valuable field trips and class visits will continue for many years to come. Thank you. Third comment is from Ethan Rotman of California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Each year, more than 2,000 students at Marin County study fish habitats, the importance of watersheds, and how human actions impact these resources through a process of hatching trout in their classroom. The students spend several weeks learning about fish and what they need to survive, then set up an aquarium in their classroom, which house trout eggs. Students monitor and care for the fish for several weeks before releasing them into a lake. This amazing learning program is done with the help of and support of MMWD, Golden Gate Trout Unlimited, and coordinated and permitted through the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. MMWD plays a critical role in the support of this award-winning program. It has been my pleasure to work with Greg Andrews for the past 2 decades on this project. In more recent years, MMWD has stepped up their involvement through the volunteer staff, increased coordination of the fish release at Bontempi, and leadership with One Tam and watershed stewards. Marin County Office of Education is very supportive of this program, as it provides excellent real-world learning on the environment. We are only able to provide the high quality of programming and teacher support due to the outstanding work of MMWD staff. Thank you for their past involvement. We look forward to many good years ahead. If you have any questions or need more information, please let me know, and I am happy to help. And the next comment is from Bob Olson Brown of St. Patrick's School. I'm writing this email to say how much I value the habitat restoration field trips my 3rd grade class has been a part of for, I believe, almost 7 years. This program has been a valuable opportunity for my students to learn the importance of environmental stewardship, as well as learning about the watershed that provides drinking water for Marin County. Many of my students had never seen Phoenix Lake before this field trip, and many have enjoyed the experience so much that they bring their parents to MMWD land on the weekends following our trips. Suzanne Whalen and her staff have done a fabulous job year after year getting kids excited about habitat restoration that many are disappointed when the day is done. These field trips have inspired me to look into the school-wide environmental cleanup days and habitat restoration for all grades with families during the coming year when everything opens up again. We look forward to many more years of partnerships in our environmental education of our students. And the next comment is from Eric Nelson. My name is Eric Nelson and I teach biology major at Dominican University. Every year I teach ecology laboratory and my students participate in the forest succession program that is part of MMWD's volunteer outreach program. First, my students collect data during a field trip, recording the abundance of key plants in the MMWD watershed. The following week, they analyze their data in class and test hypotheses related to species abundance. My students learn to recognize and name some plants, and they learn methods for collecting ecological data. And when I say learn, they really learn. No in-class work can compare to the hands-on experience that students get from working with Suzanne Whalen and her crew. Your citizen science program is making my students into better students. At the end of the semester, I survey my students to rank all the ecology lab activities. First, students gave the MMWD field trip high scores for educational value, and second, students voted to keep the MMWD field trip, more than any other field trip on my syllabus. And I'm gonna go ahead and allow Larry Minikis to speak. Larry Minikis.
Well, first of all, it's great to hear from those teachers. And as just a citizen, I appreciate their input there. And Suzanne, it's exciting that the wildlife survey can be done at home, because I think there's a lot of people who are getting really sick of Netflix, and that there'll really be an opportunity to get far more people involved in this than there have been in the past. And when this whole issue began with COVID, I immediately thought back to the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps of the 1930s, and all the work that they've done throughout the whole One-Tam area, and the opportunity that I think this will present when the health authorities allow you to restart the volunteer program, to bring this back in, because what we're seeing, I'm sure those of you out there can see, is that we're seeing a lot more people that are really discovering the watershed for the first time and loving it for the first time. And I think a lot of them will want to give back. And I and my friends are looking forward to getting back to our official broom pulling. We've done years of broom pulling, and we want to continue that. And I know we've missed thousands of hours this spring in that, and I'm sorry that we couldn't do more, but it is what it is. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay. So
I have one.
That was great. Go ahead, Armando.
Sorry. Larry's Minikis mentioned something which I think is important, and that is that I think what we're seeing right now during this time of COVID is that people are recognizing public lands as essential landscapes. And I really do think that part of what's happening right now with the language that the new language that's coming out with COVID is actually offering us new language that we can use where the public understands the concept as a part of our storytelling. I love the idea of thinking of public lands as essential landscapes. Just like we have essential workers and all of that. And just one other side note, which Larry Minikis mentioned, and that is that, depending on how long the shelter in place goes on, I'm hopeful that if part of the effort to re-up the employment of citizens who've lost jobs and such will include some sort of a CCC program. It would be great to see that, and to be able to, Carl and others thinking about how you could use crews like that could be an astonishing sort of re-entry into what the future is, whatever that will be. That's it. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? It just underscores how important the watershed is as part of our agency, and part of the backbone really of public health here in Marin. So it's a big job, and you guys are really doing a great job with with the young people and the volunteers. So thank you. Okay, so that was great, but now we have to move on to our next item, item 3.
I have to sign out, Larry. I'm so sorry, everybody. I have a hard stop right now, but thanks this was a great meeting, and I'm glad we all got a chance to honor you, Greg. I'm just going to say goodbye one last time, and I'm sorry, everybody else, that I have to go early. Take care, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, we'll see you next time. Okay, so next item is veg management update with Carl, Sean, and Crystal. I'm not sure who's lead on this. Sean, go ahead. Hey.
Good afternoon, committee members. Sean Horn, Watershed Resources Manager. So this is an update on our vegetation management that we've been conducting this fiscal year. To be totally clear, we're going to bring a full report to a future board meeting that really summarizes all of the actions completed through this fiscal year, the costs associated with those management actions, and compares that to the BIFIP targets, as well as outlines the compliance that was completed to facilitate the work. This update, we are currently in the midst of our fiscal year through the end of this month, and so we're continuing with contractors' work. So that's why this is an update and not the full report at this time. So the district carries out vegetation management work on its watershed lands throughout the year with the chief goal of reducing wildfire hazards and maintaining the biodiversity. In 2009, the district adopted the Biodiversity, Fires, and Fuels Integrated Plan, the EIR, which set out the vegetation management targets and priorities for the district for the next 5 years. Due to COVID-19, the district did experience some temporary disruptions in contractor activity. However, we were able to adapt and overcome that, partially through the board's determination to allow for emergency contracting procedures. So we were able to bring another forestry contractor on to help us achieve our forestry goals for this year. So in preparation for wildfire season, the district has been working diligently to maintain existing wildfire fuel breaks, reduce fuel loads, and manage non-native plants on the watershed. So I'm going to turn your attention to table 1 on page 2 of the staff report, which is a summary of the vegetation management activities that we've been completing under the BIFIP. So the first column is all the management actions that we do. The second column is completed work to date. And then the third column is work that we anticipate completing by the end of the fiscal year, which is the end of this month. And then that compares it to the BIFIP targets. So the first management action, maintenance of our fuel break infrastructure, we have achieved our 150-acre target. So we're doing very well in that regard. For cyclical mowing of fine fuels, these 1-hour fuels that we manage throughout the watershed, we're over our acreage in general, and this is partly due to just the extensive amount of parking lot areas, roadside management that we do, defensible space around infrastructure and buildings. And that's something that we'll probably see from on an annual basis as well. Cyclical removal of broom from our fuel break infrastructure, we're at 191 acres. Our target on an annual basis is 240 acres. So we're slightly below that target. However, when we get to broom management in our oak woodlands, you'll see that we're over. So as far as broom goes, we are actually achieving our overall target for broom management. It's just slightly different. And part of this is due to some of the fuel break infrastructure that we maintain is on a maintenance cycle. So we do about 2 to 3 years for the different fuel breaks that we target broom within. And some of those acreage-wise, vary from year to year. So roadside mowing, this is kind of some of the heavier mowing that we do on our service roads and our fuel break infrastructure as well. We've achieved 8 acres with 2 acres planned. We'll hit our target of 10 acres by the end of the fiscal year. Dam maintenance, we've achieved 37 acres, which is 7 acres above our 30-acre target. This is simply a result of the dam faces all together come up to about 30 acres, but we're maintaining areas surrounding those to access the dam, so it's a little bit higher than just the dam faces themselves. For new fuel break construction, this is one of the most intensive activities and costly activities that we complete on the watershed. We've achieved 4 acres of new fuel break, and that was primarily in the Fern Canyon area. And then we've also done some isolated fuel break expansion work around Middle Peak and West Peak, some of the communication towers there as well. Early detection rapid response, this is mostly done through our partnership with OneTam and the early detection rapid response team. They've treated 135 patches this year, and so these are smaller isolated patches of non-native invasive plants throughout the watershed that they target to minimize the spread of them and protect some of our really sensitive ecosystems. So initial fuel reduction work. This is our Management Action 23, our forest stand structure improvements. This is building off of the research work that we've been collaborating with U.S. Forest Service, Cal Poly, and UC Davis, but scaling it up under the BIFIP implementation plan. So we've achieved over 25 acres to date. We've got about 30 acres that we'll continue to work on. We have 5 contractor crews currently working on the watershed on forestry work specifically. So this is a big effort this year, and we will achieve our 60 acres. And we hope to bring back some really detailed reports on that work, because it's impressive, the work that we've been able to complete under the BIFIP, and it's very meaningful, and we'll report that in detail in our final report. So maintenance of forestry sites is the next management action that we complete. We've completed 16 acres to date. We're over our target of 8 acres. And this is something that we'll report back on during our full report, but as we scale up forestry work, this maintenance activity is going to need to scale as well, because it's really protecting the investment that we have in that forestry work through maintaining some of the resprouts of sudden oak death trees and some of the brush that was removed in that initial effort. So it's important for us to maintain those sites that we initially invest in. So Douglas fir management, the next action is to protect grasslands and oak woodlands. This is Management Action 24. To date, we've completed 34 acres. That's 4 acres over our target of 30 acres. And an initial broom removal and maintenance and initial removal, we've completed 347 acres this fiscal year, which is about 40 acres over our target of 305 acres. Other management of other priority weeds. This is an important activity. And this one we will continue to see year after year that we have some fluctuation in, because we're right at the time when these plants start to bloom and we can manage them. So some of them will fall in this fiscal year, some will fall in the next fiscal year in July. So we'll see some fluctuations. We're currently at 30 acres, and we'll see where we get by the end of the fiscal year, and we'll report back fully on that, and as well as our strategy for the next coming fiscal year. So that's our overview and update. As I mentioned, we will be bringing back a more detailed report that summarizes the costs. We have a lot of good activities planned for the next fiscal year, and a lot of these management actions are actually increasing. And so we'll have more opportunities for different crews to assist us with the implementation. We'll also be working hard to do contracting for not only the implementation, but also the compliance work that goes along with it. I think one of the things you'll hear from us when we come back with our final report is that the compliance work that is necessary to allow us to facilitate this is really critical, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of commitment and a lot of resources from the district to ensure that we are clearing sites before we implement our vegetation management. And then as well, in our final report, we'll give you an update on some of the biological inventories that we have planned for the next fiscal year under the BIFIP. So with that, that's kind of our update, and I will take any questions from the committee, and Carl's here to assist as well.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a question on heavy equipment and using heavy equipment to kind of do some of the initial clearing, whether you feel we have sufficient heavy equipment. I know we were using a mulching head up on Bolinas Ridge, which is amazing what it does to the landscape.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering whether we could increase our productivity and expand what we're getting done if we had another piece of equipment up there and invested that way. So just would like.
Yeah, so we're in a really good space this fiscal year. We've actually got a new excavator coming that's going to be delivered probably by August or September. And so that'll replace our existing piece of equipment that's kind of reached its useful life. And we've also purchased a new masticating head for that new piece of equipment. So that's going to give us some more efficiency from an equipment standpoint. We're not increasing the total number of excavators with masticating heads on the watershed, but we also have a small skid steer with a mulching attachment. So when we send our crews out to do forestry work, we have 2 pieces of equipment working. Right now, the forestry work that Carl's overseeing, we have 5 contractors out, 2 contractors with equipment, masticating heads on excavators, and then also our own crews. And you can see the production rate is significantly larger with that much interaction, and multiple crews working collectively and collaboratively has been a really rewarding experience and resulting in some very good work. So yeah. To your point, yes, more equipment does help, but we are investing in it, and I think we're in a good space for it right now.
Good to hear. Go ahead, Armando.
Thanks. Who does the road berm clearing on the Fairfax-Bolinas Road section that goes through the Water District lands? Is that the county or the state, or is that us?
Carl, you want to go with that one?
Armando, are you asking about the roadside brushing or
Yes,
the
roadside brushing.
associated drainage work?
Well, maybe both.
So the section of Bolinas Fairfax Road that goes through the Meadow Club and through past Azalea Hill, it's all owned by the County of Marin and maintained by the County Public Works Department. Although we work weeds along that corridor at a much finer scale than they would.
Okay. Because I've been cycling out in the watershed, and you can see that a lot of work has happened in this quiet period for watershed roads, and I can see how that would be a lot easier for the crews to accomplish work without interruption.
Yeah, that would, most of the work that you've seen clearing slides, pulling ditches, and piling up material, that's been County Public Works. They did that mostly during when the road was closed.
Yeah, it looks really good, by the way. Everything out there, to me, looks really good. So thank you all.
Anyone else? Do we have any public comment, Charisse?
Yes, we do. So we have one email. I'm going to go ahead and read that off from Priscilla Bull. I thank the Watershed staff for this informative update. Table 1, if possible, include a map of the areas where broom and other priority weeds have been treated. A map would assist the public to compare current conditions with the invasive vegetation mapping in the FEIR. Then I am going to allow Marin Conservation League. Marin Conservation League.
Yes, that's actually Nona Dennis. Somehow or other, I'm labeled on Zoom meetings as Marin Conservation League, even though I am just, actually I'm here as Nona Dennis. But I do want to let you know that we are getting excellent reports monthly from Sean, from Carl, from Aaron Fulton. We'd like to have one for our Parks and Open Space Committee from Suzanne, because people are asking a lot about how you're accomplishing your broom removal if you have are not able to put volunteers into the field. So, but I just want to let you know that this is a monthly thing for us. Sean does an excellent job coordinating this, carrying on the tradition of Mike Swayze, who now, of course, we have on our own board. So that's helpful in other respects. So we're keeping in touch with everything that you do. We're more familiar with the vegetation management plan, but we had an excellent presentation by Sean and Carl on culverts. Never thought culverts could be so interesting, but you've got more than 700 of them. And that work started, I think, under Mike Swayze after the 2005 Road and Trail Management Plan came out. And so we've been tracking that. It was a very interesting presentation of how much you're saving in sediment production and how important that work is. So we want to thank you for keeping us up to date on everything you're doing. Thanks very much.
Okay. Anyone else?
I have one other thing really quickly. Sean, have you and Carl, have you looked into military surplus equipment when it comes to vehicles?
We, as a district, I mean, we have, but
you haven't seen anything good.
No, and we've tried leasing equipment for cost savings. You know, with a lease, you get the advantage of the on-site maintenance. Now we're much better off when we're buying a new piece of equipment that doesn't have any unknown history to it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, with the equipment, we really want to be careful about the quality of lines on that equipment because we're working in such sensitive habitat. So, you know, sometimes the used equipment has a useful life that has been exceeded in that capacity.
When I was managing Alcatraz, I was able to get some really nice equipment that we were able to get, you know, but anyway, that makes sense. Thanks.
Okay.
So
Anyone else want to chime in?
yes, I'm going to go ahead and allow Barbara Salzman. Barbara, I believe you had your hand up.
myself. Okay, well, no, can you hear me?
Hi, we can hear you, Barbara.
Okay, yeah, two things. Hi, everybody. One is that there's been a new group of us formed called Fern, that probably some of you have heard of. That it is a group that is specifically concerned about the loss of habitat with the firework going on. And so we'll probably be trying to monitor your work more closely, and we're going to be also looking at the other fire efforts, and we're meeting pretty regularly these days. But I had also a second question, or a question. I couldn't tell, maybe I could figure it out, but can you tell me, Sean, how many acres would you say of undisturbed or native habitat have been affected so far by your work? And not the broom or other invasive species. Maybe none. I don't know. You look like you don't understand my question. Should I ask it differently? Right.
I think our BIFIP does a very good job of mapping out some of the areas where we're conducting this work and some areas where we're not conducting this work. And so to your point, there's a large amount of the watershed where work is not planned because of the native complexity within those areas and the weed-free nature of it, where none of this work is occurring. And then there's other areas that are building off some of the fuel break infrastructure the district has built since 1994. And then I think to get to your point though, the forestry work that we're currently underway with would be considered some of the new work, and as well as the new fuel breaks that we've built. So in total, those two activities are about 65 acres this year.
Is that you, Sean? Okay, so it's about 65 acres. Did I hear you mention willows?
No, I'm sorry. But in our final report, we will have a map of all our management zones that'll show everything.
Oh, okay. Okay, but so far it's about 65 acres, and I guess I could check the EIS. But do you? What's your ultimate goal?
Sean, let me. I think public comment is a time to hear comments and let staff and board respond at the right time appropriately. So Barbara, we're always interested in your comments. And
not my questions.
Well, sure, your questions as well, and then let staff be directed by the board if they'd like to hear now or come back with more information or that sort of thing versus asking staff directly.
Okay, that would be fine. I didn't know you had such a differentiation, but I would like to hear at some point the answer to that. That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. I had a little disturbance here. I had a clear and I didn't catch everything, but one of the things that was mentioned in TAC, and I don't know if Greg's still listening, was the impact on our vegetation management, on the vegetation overhanging the creeks and how that affects water temperature and fish habitat. So I don't really know if that's addressed in the BIFIP. I assume it would be, and I'm kind of thinking our fire break work is far enough away from streamside habitat, but that was a concern that Barbara touched upon that would be interesting. I don't know if you can have an answer if it's in BIFIP or not, but that was one thing that came up at the Technical Advisory Committee.
I'll just speak to that if I can, which is to say that it was raised during the discussion at the TAC meeting, and it was acknowledged by the chair, Rob Carson, that this is an important issue of fire, the work on fire and its impacts, and that it would be a future agenda item for the TAC to talk about and probably get some sort of a presentation on. So I think that the TAC will be addressing that question again in a future TAC meeting.
Okay. Just
Larry, I'll just add real quick that the BIFIP provides a number of mitigation measures to avoid sensitive habitats like riparian areas and stream crossings. And we have a lot of flexibility with the work that we do and how we do that work And so we are able to kind of move our work away from those areas. And we don't have a lot of vegetation management in the vicinity of Lagunitas Creek specifically. Most of our vegetation management's on the watershed, and most of it is avoiding those sensitive areas.
Yeah, I would assume so. Okay, well, thanks a lot, Greg and Sean. Anything else anybody wants to add? If not, then let's move on to our next item, which is the red flag warning and wildfire protection procedures. So that would be Don Wick, our Chief Ranger.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
You're good.
Yes.
All right, here we go. Thank you, Seth. I'm Don Wick. I'm the Chief Ranger for the Water District. So some of this will be probably a refresher for some and maybe educational for others. The red flags are issued by the National Weather Service. And what they do is they look at the weather conditions and forecastings, and specifically they're looking for warmer temperatures, very low humidity, and strong winds. And if they meet those protocols, they predict as an increased risk of fire danger. So they issue a red flag warning. And that goes down in our county to Marin County Fire Department. They vet that information and decide if it warrants issuing a red flag countywide. And that comes to us. So an example, today there's a red flag warning in the Sacramento Valley, in the foothills, the Delta, and northern San Joaquin, but there is not one here in Marin. So the roots of the land closures goes back to the mid-70s. There was a group of landowners that got together with County Fire. County Fire began declaring public land closures due to the periods of drought in the 70s, extreme fire weather conditions, and personnel shortages that they were suffering. And it continued somewhat sporadically up until 1987. And then they formed what's known as the Interagency Land Closure Procedure. And the participants in that are the Marin Water District, Marin County Fire, State Parks, and Marin County Open Space. So one of the problems that we ran into initially when we were doing land closures here at the Water District, we were trying to close the lands to everyone and vacate any visitors who were up here. But what we ran into was a lack of visitor compliance from all the groups that were up here. So in 2004, it was decided that what we would do is just eliminate the heat source from coming up onto the Water District properties, and the heat source would be vehicles. So we were still allowing hikers and bikes and horses to come up here, but it was kind of useless to try to track them all down and kick them off the property. So that's what we currently do is when we get a red flag warning, we have a procedure and a protocol that we go to where we notify all our additional land agencies around us. We notify the local fire departments. County Fire already knows it, but we notify the Ross Valley Fire, anybody that's going to respond up here, that we are closed. We go through a series of posting the properties that we are closed. We update our phone lines, our phone messages to indicate to anybody that calls in that we're closed, and basically shut it down for the period of the red flag period. So one of the things that we also do is suspend any permits that are out there for user permits or work permits. We suspend contractors, notify the West Point Inn to cancel their reservations and remain closed during the red flag warning period. We place rangers and maintenance personnel on standby status. We staff our engine up here, load the dozer onto the transport and stage it. And we extend our closing ranger shifts by 2 hours. And then during the red flag period, we're patrolling the areas that we know of where we have had illegal camping and fire activity in the past. So that remains, we use those protocols until the red flag period is over. And then once it is declared over, then we go back into a reopening, which is basically going back through our protocols and working it in reverse and open the land back up. Now, on a side note, we used the red flag protocol for the procedure for closing the watershed during this COVID period, because it was basically the same thing. So those came in handy for a different reason for closing the watershed. And just to give you an idea of the number of closures that we've had in the past few years, last year we had 14 days total of closure. In 2018, we had 15 days, as well as in 2017. And before that, it was a smattering of days. 2016, we had 2, 15, we had 1, 14, we had 6, 13, we had 8. So you can see lately, within the last 3 to 4 years, we've started to increase the number of red flags that we've had in the closures that we've had.
Wow.
So any questions?
I have two.
Go for it.
Yeah, thanks. I think that
Sure.
that last item that you just mentioned could be something that would be very important to mention at our regular board meetings, saying, you know, we're seeing this annual increase of red flag warnings, and then let us know where that sits in terms of the current year, whether they're starting earlier, those sorts of things that I think will just inform the public. I think that would be very good. And then the other item, is there signage if you're not able to prohibit hikers and cyclists? Is there signage that basically says it's a red flag warning day, this is a high risk day to be on the watershed, something like that?
One of the problems that we ran into was that this watershed is so porous and there's so many entry points onto it. Prior to just limiting it to cars, they actually did go around and try to post all the entrances, but they've identified 40 different ways to get onto the watershed itself. So it was becoming kind of useless, and it's a lot of signage and a lot of manpower to do that.
Yeah,
now we have a great social media team, and Jeannie and her predecessors are great at getting the message out to the public. So we're trying to push it out through us, through county fire, through the sheriff's office, by any means we can, to let the public know that the watershed is closed.
Perfect. Thank you.
For me, I think, Armando, it's a good point, and it's a good question. One reason I was interested to bring this, because in the transition that Don noted, we've maintained to some extent calling it a closure. And we can think about, you know, what we call it, but we really are not closing the watershed. And what that does mean is, really direct to your point, that does have some safety implications. So we do need to think about, as we're doing, and I think Don's doing a good job targeting the most critical areas in terms of people and ignition sources. But I just felt it important for the board and the public to understand we aren't taking the action you may think in terms of when we say we've had closures or we're closing the watershed because of flag events.
No, thank you. Those are really good answers. Thanks, Don, for the work that you and your team do.
Yeah, and I know we use the word closure, and I actually prefer that because I hope it dissuades people from coming up here during the period, because really we are fearful of the fire up here. I mean, everybody is, and the less people we have up here, the better.
Yeah. It's a good point. It's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Are we posting red flag on the homepage?
I believe so. I think Jeannie and and her crew, I know they've done a great job.
The procedure for us is when Don notifies us, we put it in the alert bar, we push it out in social media to make sure that we get the word out for him.
I mean, I think it really should be prominently displayed, because a lot of the visitors they're going to ping the website before they get in their car. So
in the alert bar, it's the first thing you see.
Good. Okay.
In the app, right?
But do they have to open the alert bar to see it?
No, it says that it's closed due to a red warning.
Okay. Good. Okay. I guess we have
I have a comment, Larry. a couple of things. Don, it seems to me that even though there's 40 entrances, there must be 6 or so that are the heavy ones. And we could start off, perhaps, thought that we could put a rotating beacon or something there activated by a cell phone so that you wouldn't have to send somebody out there. It would just go off on its own. It could be solar driven. You know, something to think about. The other one, it seems to me that on the flagpoles at the district, we should fly a red flag.
We do. We do it up here at the ranger station.
Right, but not at the, I'm talking about the general office.
That
Why
I don't
not?
know
Everybody passes by on the freeway, you know, it's an easy, right under the American flag, put a red flag.
It also means the range is open, so you got to be careful what you're trying to put out there.
The range is open?
They use it for gun ranges. They use a red flag to let people know that it's open.
Well, we could put a tree on or a burnt tree.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so move on then to the last item on today's agenda, which is the C-19 operations, and that's Sean and Crystal.
Yeah, good afternoon, committee members.
Very quickly, Sean, very quickly, do we have any public comment on the last item, Charisse?
We do not have any public comment.
Thank you.
Yes, Sean Horn, Watershed Resource Manager. This is an update on watershed operations in response to COVID-19 shelter in place. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, Marin County Public Health ordered a shelter in place. The shelter in place included limiting access to public lands for parking. This was in response to the increased visitations that public lands were seeing immediately after the shelter in place. We have been seeing higher than normal visitation on the watershed during this period. However, the watershed has continued to be open for the last 2 months during the shelter in place for local access via walking, hiking, riding your bike, equestrian usage, and the such. And there was also ADA parking made available at Sky Oaks to facilitate access. We are moving away from the shelter or easing of the shelter in place guidelines. So to facilitate a reopening strategy for the watershed, we've developed a reopening plan with different phases. So I'll turn your attention to page 2 of the staff report in table 1. And we've tried to just succinctly summarize the different phases that we put together for reopening the watershed. And we have a plan that goes along with this that kind of outlines the safety procedures for staff and visitors. But phase 1 was really the shelter in place where we had closure of the parking areas. We also closed our water fountains during that period because we were noticing group crowding around those facilities and saw them as a high risk area. We restricted our research and special use permits because most of those required access and there was conditions within the shelter in place about what folks were approved to be doing. We also closed the Sky Oaks office to the public. We, on June 1st, with the updated shelter in place, we moved into phase 2 because June 1st, they relaxed the parking restrictions. So we reopened parking access for the watershed. We reopened our water fountains at that time as well. We've maintained closure of our picnic areas. We've opened our restrooms and actually increased servicing of restrooms. And we've actually put hand sanitizers on all the porta potties to make sure that folks had access to sanitizing materials. We've maintained restrictions of our research and special use permits during phase 2, and the Sky Oaks office remained closed to the public. So as of June 5th and June 12th, there was some revisions to the shelter in place that allowed for additional businesses to begin to operate. So we kind of moved into phase 3 at this period where parking was open, water fountains open, picnic areas were continued to be closed in the main areas of Lagunitas Lake and high visitation zones. Restrooms were open, but then we had a limited access for limited approval of research and special use permits. And that was, there's not all businesses approved that wanted these types of permits from us, but there are some. So we started to issue permits for those approved businesses. However, in line with the shelter in place guidelines, we also required that all permittees submit their site protection plans to us, which was a new condition of our permitting process. And then we're in the process of modifying our front door at Sky Oaks to allow for window service so that we can keep the general public generally out of the office space, which is common space, but we can still service them for parking passes and such. We do expect update on June 29th, and this will likely provide some more access specifically relating to our picnic areas. So we're waiting for the exact language of that shelter in place order to come out, but when it does, we'll adapt our operations accordingly. As part of our reopening plan, we do have a number of conditions laid out for the rangers to monitor use on a daily basis and make some decisions regarding the opening of the gates at Sky Oaks. So the first weekend after the shelter in place was lifted, we did see heavy visitation on a Sunday, and the rangers decided to close the Sky Oaks gate due to kind of overcrowding and limited parking availability. So they metered people in and out on that Sunday for about a 3 to 4 hour period. And the only other time that we've used a similar approach was last week on the road that goes to Bontempe parking area. We closed that gravel road down temporarily due to overcrowding and increased parking. So the rangers have been reporting that in general, we're seeing weekend crowds during the week and holiday crowds on the weekends. So we are continuing to see an increase in usage on the watershed. We've put out signs at all of our major entry points to notify people about safe practices while they're recreating. And we continue to review that signage to see if there's ways that we can improve it. And we'll continue to adapt that strategy as we move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead, Armando.
Go ahead.
You're muted.
I've got a comment if you want to shoot me in first.
Go ahead, Larry.
Okay. Sean, my wife was at Bontempe the other day, which I sent a note to Crystal about this, but I think we need to take a hard look at our bathroom cleaning and servicing policy, and perhaps even the number of bathrooms. The Bontempe bathroom was a disaster on Wednesday. It was probably due to be serviced, from what I understood from Crystal. But I think we need to think through a little more about how many bathrooms we need, because we're getting very heavy usage. And with respect to COVID, you know, these things need to be cleaned, huh? And maybe they even need daily service, not just once a week or twice a week. So
yeah.
a thought.
No, that's a good thought. We did increase servicing, but I think we are seeing more than normal usage, and we can increase it again, and
yeah,
also look into getting additional units out there too.
Yeah, even if they're not in that fancy enclosure, you know, just sitting there is fine.
Yeah.
I have two questions. One of them is, what time are you ending up finding that you're having to do closures for either the Bontempe parking lot or for metering people in through Sky Oaks?
So on Sunday, when we initiated the first one, it was from 12 to 3 during that day. And I think that is generally our higher use area. And Don,
Okay.
if the Bontempe was different, please let us know. Don, you're on mute still.
I'm on mute. Oh no. My other, Don is.
Kicking back and forth. So no, that was about the same time for both. We are seeing an increase in people coming up here in the morning and then leaving in the morning, which is good. But on the weekends, I think people are coming and staying longer.
And then the other thing that I just want to point out, and I think this is obvious to all of us, you know, one of the effects of COVID is that we are seeing this increased visitorship on the watershed. And one of the days that I was out there, I talked to a couple of the rangers and heard that there seems to be an increase of incidents. And so I think it may be worthwhile putting into the discussion additional staff for watershed protection. I'd just like to suggest that we put that on as a discussion item for a future meeting.
Okay. Okay, one final thing, and I've talked to staff about it. At Deer Park, the school has fenced off the entry. So we're sharing a very narrow entry, and I think I've actually sent you guys an email about maybe helping the school district with creating a little sign so bikers walk their bikes, because you can't have two-way traffic on the trail to get in through Deer Park, which is a pretty busy entry point in Fairfax.
Mhm.
So just something else to put on your plate. Any other comments? Or,
Larry, I think we've actually got signage out there as of today.
oh, good. Okay, yeah. Okay, another good meeting.
So actually, Chairman Bregman, sorry, we do have Larry Minikis.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. So he has his hand up. Larry Minikis, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
So, sorry to disturb the ending of this meeting, but Larry, what you were saying, the same problem was existing at Phoenix Lake when the gate was closed. Everyone was coming through a little 3-foot area, and there was no social distancing.
Yeah.
I found it very stressful. I still find going on Phoenix Lake to be very, very stressful personally. And I mentioned to Ben, I wish you guys could put up signs strongly encouraging people to wear masks around the lakes, because there are a lot of people and they seem to believe that it's safe out there and not keeping social distance. And if we go into another phase, God forbid, but if we go into another phase of this later in the year, I hope this will almost become mandatory for people to be wearing masks. And that's my comment. Thank you. And everybody, thank you again for this meeting.
Okay, okay, folks, I think that's it. Thanks, everybody. It was a great meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, ciao.
Bye.